So, did you know that women will talk about sex, death, and even religion more often than they will talk about money? And that men, on the other hand, will talk about money more than any of those topics and often. Why is this, right? Why do you think that women have such an aversion to talking about money? Well, I'll tell you this, it's not an accident, it's by design. And that is the topic that we will be talking about today.
You're listening to Straight from the Psychologist's Mouth, a podcast that teaches women in midlife to unapologetically stop silencing their dreams and start designing the lives they want to live in. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie, and as a clinical psychologist of the last 2 decades and a twice-divorced single mother myself, I not only know how hard it can feel heading into midlife, I am living it right here with you. I've taken all the many failed attempts and lessons learned in my own life and combine it with my extensive clinical experience to give you the tools you need to make midlife the best time in your life. No joke. So let's get started.
Welcome back, everybody. Listen, starting off with just blanket apology. Life happens, right? We all have life, and I had a family emergency. So these 2 recordings got pushed together, and getting them edited and out was just not going to happen last week. So lucky for you, I'm going to drop one today, and I'm going to drop one in a few more days. So in 1 week, you're going to get the second 2 installments of my series. Now, listen, this is a series. So if you haven't listened to the 2 previous podcasts on mastery of your midlife, which was a couple weeks back, and I will put the links here in the notes, or on relationships, why women struggle so hard and so much with relationships, and what my recommendations are on how to navigate that, so that, the second half of life, our second act, is actually much, much better, and our relationships much better for it. So I want to make sure that this is a series, and the series really is wrapped around this concept that I want women in midlife to really make midlife their best life, which I know sounds super duper corny. And maybe it is a little corny, but it's true. I really want this for women. I think that we've been given a bad rap, and I don't think that many of us understand the insidious nature of it, which just means it's like in the water, ladies. It's in the air that we breathe. And we really don't question some of the very things that keep us feeling in this stuck place. And today's topic is all about stepping into our own power with this, and my recommendations on how you might start to do that in midlife. One thing, though, that I am offering through this whole series, and I would strongly suggest that you take me up on the opportunity for, is go to my website at learntoloveyourstory.com, go in the notes here and sign up right away for your free 30-minute one-on-one coaching. This is not, there's no obligation. This is not something where I'm going to be selling you something. This is really my gift to you for us to sit down and have a more individual conversation about these 5 different areas I'm doing this series on, which is relationship problems that women have, the financial burdens that women have in midlife, how health and wellness is of top of mind in midlife, life-work balance is of top of mind, and really our own staying on top of our own personal development, staying true to ourselves authentically. These are these 5 areas that we really get stuck in. And if I can help you with anything, it would be to figure out, where are those weak spots for you? Where are your strengths? And what are my recommendations to you specifically, not just these podcasts, but to you specifically, on how you could balance this out. So please go to the notes, click on the link, set up your 30-minute appointment with me. Or if you're on my website, learntoloveyourstory.com, please set up your 30-minute free invite to be coached by me personally, no obligation. I really just am trying to get the help out there for women. Of course, I am going to be also talking about some new programs by the end of this series. So that's an opportunity for you as well. But really, this part of it is really just about giving you this assessment and giving you my individual plan for you, the recommendations that I have for you. So please hit the notes, click on that link, and make sure that you get that done right away, because I'd love to meet with you, love to sit down with you. I've already started some of these. They are really fun to go through with people and to help you really just have these epiphanies like, oh my gosh, it's because I'm doing the thing that you talked about in that first one on relationships. I have all this people pleasing, and I didn't realize that I wasn't talking to my kids in a way that was relational, but was still transactional, like I was parenting them at home. And this is why those relationships were breaking down. It's been really interesting to help women start to see some of these patterns for themselves. So I just putting it out there in the notes. Be sure to sign up for your 30-minute one-on-one. But let's get in today about how finances, how having enough resources is a real issue for women. It totally is. And that quote that I was talking about at the top of this podcast is actually from Tori Dunlap, and she's written a book called Financial Feminist. And this book of hers really kind of starts by going into detail about the systemic ways in which women are taught to really cower or hide from finances, from talking about money, to feel shame, to feel embarrassment around talking about money, and why that has such a significant impact then on us as we head into midlife. And while I would like to tell you in the 21st century that things are, in a much better space, what I also know is that we are the most financially leveraged generation, that Gen X generation, and women in particular, because they've only made 80 cents on the dollar. And that's if they were a white woman. Let's just intersection that with any other of the areas of oppression. And then it's lower and lower and lower for women of color and women who have disabilities and whatnot. That there is an inequity here. And part of that inequity is literally built into the fact that we didn't go for it. We don't even talk about it. We would rather talk about sex and death and anything, religion, rather than talk about money, rather than, put ourselves out there, rather than ask for that raise. And systemically, there are things in place that keep us feeling shame, keep us feeling like not good enough. And that's really what I find as a clinical psychologist to be at the heart of this. There is an internalized oppressive mechanism that keeps us doing these things. And that is the sense that we aren't good enough. And certainly that isn't just for women. That is something that, that internal oppression uses this in many, many ways. And just to back up a little bit, what is internalized oppression? Well, internalized oppression is when we take on the duties of the oppressor. Okay, so it's when, if you want to keep women making 80 cents on the dollar of men, well, you're going to have to keep us doing some of the things that keep us in that position, like not talking about money. And how do you get us not to talk about money? Well, you socially create a bunch of rules around why when women talk about money, that's just really not ladylike. And that, oh my gosh, how selfish is she that she's talking about bettering herself and her own career? What about her kids? I bet they're just not parented at all. And they're parented over there by that daycare. And it's in the water and the air in the way that we talk to women and talk to ourselves about this that keeps us internally oppressing ourselves and keeping us in the space where we don't step into our own power, where we don't start to make choices socially, like on a bigger level, system level, but even personally within our own lives, step into what we want to do. So what does that look like? Well, what it looks like is things like this. So I had a family emergency. I was with, the bigger group of my family. And I come from, there's 4 siblings that I have. So there's a group of 5 of us, and each of us have kids in some My eldest sibling has 5 kids. I have 2 My one of my sisters has one, but the rest of them have like three each, like, like lots of cousins. And now the cousins are having babies. And so there's cousins and second cousins and whatever that is. So it's a huge family, my friends. And I was sitting down and I was talking to one of she's in her mid 20s, I think, one of my nieces. Post graduation, she's working in her first kind of real career with her degree, and is feeling like it's not enough, feeling like she could do more, she wants to do more. But when she looks to put her resume together, she doesn't feel like she has a lot of experience yet. When she looks to, what if I did like a little side hustle thing here, she feels very shut down by the agency and the contract that she signed, and how scary that feels for her to push the boundaries of that and let herself kind of build her portfolio and build her resume. And we're having this conversation, and I'm giving her some of my just different ideas. I as an entrepreneur, starting things like Learn to Love Your Story was something that was a side hustle for me. I still had a private practice that I was working full time. I still had a part-time job as a professor for an online university. I, wasn't giving up the paychecks and what was paying the bills. I was just doing something on the side. And I'm talking to her about some of the things that I did and why I did that. But really the overwhelming like glaring thing here for me is that she just didn't feel empowered to do those things. It wasn't that she wasn't smart enough to have thought of them. Everything that I talked about with her, she was like, yeah, I've kind of thought of that, but there's this thing in my contract, or I kind of thought about, applying for a job like that, but man, I'm only about 75% of the skill sets are things that I've done. And I've only really done some of them in my internships and stuff like that. It wasn't even in like a work capacity. So she really was hesitant to put herself out there. Now, mind you, she has a younger sibling, my nephew, that I had a similar conversation with, only I wasn't giving him any advice. I was asking him, he's graduating from college this year. I was asking him how that was going and what his degree was going to be in and what he thinks his next step's going to be. And here is the glaring difference between these two siblings who were raised by parents that I know them well. One of them is my sibling. Like, I know that those two parents were like, you do what you want to do in this world. We are 100% behind you. We are your biggest fans. This, like there was nothing overt in how they raised these two young adults that would create this stark difference. But here was the difference with my nephew. He is leaving college with a degree that has literally nothing to do with the career path that he is headed out to do. He's like, I'm just going to get this 4-year degree. I didn't really know what I was doing. Kind of took these classes. I finally ended up with this degree, but that's fine because it's just a BA and I'm good. Like, that's great because that's going to look great on my resume. Doesn't really matter what the subject matter was because I'm going off in this direction over here. And I am, already talking to people and, making my way into, maybe I'll do some, practical work like this, but then I'm hoping to get kind of a job with it this way and eventually to be able to, do it for myself, to own my own thing. And I'm like, wow, like the difference between these two is drastic when you compare and contrast. They were raised in the same family. They had the same privileges. They had the same access. They both are educated. What's the deal? Well, the biggest deal here is that women are conditioned to feel this way. That women are conditioned to feel like they need to take the safe route, that they need to do what they're being told to do. And they are not in the same way given the same feedback all through their youth and into teenage years and then into young adulthood to take risks and to step out. I mean, there's a statistic, I'll try to find it and put it in the notes, but there's a statistic that women, when they're sending out resumes, will only apply for jobs that they have like 80, I'm sorry, that they have like 95 or 90% of the skill sets for, whereas, dudes, it's like 70. I mean, I'm just pulling that out of thin air. I'll try to find the actual statistic and put it in the notes for you, but it's like that, right? Like we condition our young men to feel like, hey, I have enough. I've got enough of these skill sets behind me. I'm going to go for it. But we condition our women in a much different capacity. I have a quote from Dr. Teray Trent, and I've used her quotes before, but I think it encapsulates what I'm getting at here. So I just want to share it with you. And that quote is, "It's easy for women to be uprooted in this world. So many of us put the needs of others before our own to the point we lose sight of what our own needs are. So many of us shrink back during moments of decision making or are afraid to make demands of those around us for fear they won't like us or they'll leave." Right? I mean, I know that you hear this, right? I know that you hear this, and this is that the energy of the not good enough, the energy of what I'm going to talk about in my next podcast that kind of feeds into this hustle culture that we live in. So why I share this quote and why I'm talking about this story that I had, this experience I had with my nephew and my niece, is that I really want us to name what this is, which is, it's the insidious nature of old patterns. Like, I don't think if you asked most adults right now that they really think that there should be inequity in pay. But most of us don't really know how we all got there or how we're all going to undo it. And it's so much more complicated than, let me just look in my organization and make sure the women and men in the same roles are making the same amount of money. That's not how this is. It's much bigger than this. It's because women are conditioned to put others' needs before their own. Women are conditioned to be the caretakers. And it's not, that we don't want to choose those things for ourselves. It's the manner in which some of those patterns are held in place, where we ourselves demean ourselves or demean other women who choose career over children. I mean, it happens, my friends. I wish in the 21st century it didn't happen, but it still happens. I have had many a coaching client where career is one of the major things that's really causing them a lot of problems. And the problem shows up like self-esteem, like low self-worth. It doesn't show up like, oh, I don't know if I have enough resources. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it does. Like, I don't know if I'm financially going to be able to afford my life. I'm still, single, still supporting myself, or, supporting a family, or that I'm the breadwinner of my family. And I took time off to have kids. So then by the time I went back into work, I'm already how many years behind my male counterparts. And so I'm not up as high as they were. I started in the company with them. I'm not up as high as they are. Or, I had to transplant because I followed a partner. We followed their job. And then in transplanting, I had to start over from scratch. And so my skill sets in my 40s and 50s far exceed some of these 30, maybe 40-year-olds that also are taking jobs way above me. But I did the thing. I transplanted because that seemed like what was best for my family. And these kinds of little changes really set us up in a way that puts us at a disadvantage. And then to be in the most financially leveraged group, the Gen X group, of somewhere in that 40 to 60 range, it's not easy, my friends. It's not easy to be a woman. And this fear of being able to care for ourselves and have enough resources very much fuels some of our decision making. Now, another quote that I'm going to use, and I'm not sure if it's her exact quote, but it's by Amy Porterfield, who is, a huge entrepreneur, tries to help other people with their entrepreneurial efforts and, side hustles. And that's kind of her whole industry is built off that, helping people kind of create their side hustle and make that be what primarily brings the money in. Amy Porterfield talks to women, and she also kind of focuses in on women. She doesn't exclude men from her work, but I know I've heard her speak, and I know that she talks a lot to women. And so one of the things that she said is, what's keeping you safe is keeping you stuck. And it's very profound, I think, to think about it this way. What's keeping me safe is keeping me stuck. So the reason why I think the answer to helping women in midlife break the bondage of not feeling good enough, break through some of the glass ceilings that they themselves have held in place or put into place or kept in place, that you really have to start thinking about, where am I making decisions based on safety? Where am I making decisions based on familiarity? Where am I making decisions based on, I think this is best for others in my life, but it isn't really in alignment with where you want to be in your life? Another way to look at this is, think about if you really have been successful. Okay. Like, so I feel like I've done a pretty good job in my life. I'm not certainly, hugely successful beyond belief like some, but I've gotten my doctorate. I've had a great education. I've worked in inpatient settings, outpatient settings, my own private practice as a psychologist. I've been a professor. I still am a part-time professor. I've done a ton of things with this. And now, this whole learntoloveyoursstory.com has really been about my taking this to the, what my experience has been and what I know to teach, and put it into this coaching level, instead of just, you have to come in for therapy. You have to have lost your shit essentially to need somebody like me. I don't want that for you. So I want to kind of preemptively give this information to women. So, all of that, I feel like I've been pretty successful. But even within that context, I've been successful anticlimactically for myself. In fact, I would tell you that the Learn to Love Your Story stuff is kind of the first time that I've breathed some fresh air in the last 2 decades into this career that I have put a ton of money, a ton of time. And I have been very successful at, but it was anticlimactic. It's like planning the wedding and then the next day being like, wow, I spent 2 years getting all that stuff together. And it's like, that was it. That's all there is. Like, it's this feeling, right? So you've spent years working towards a career. You're pretty successful in that career, and you feel like it's falling flat. So if it's not that you're making decisions to stay safe, if you can't really identify it that way, that staying safe is keeping you stuck. If you are successful but not feeling it, you are also stuck, my friend. You are also being given the gift of not liking it and feeling meh about it. That gift is telling you that this was never in alignment with what you wanted for yourself, that it was in alignment with things that were safe, that things that your family taught you to do, things that culture taught you to do, things that society said would be good for you to take on as a career or to do in your life. But it isn't what you wanted for yourself. When you come to the point anticlimactically, when you've arrived, you did all the things, you've checked all the boxes, you've been successful. You might have even been successful at kind of balancing it, life work balance. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in my next podcast, but you may have felt like you ticked all those boxes, but you're feeling flat. I see this as a gift to you that says you have successfully delivered on someone else's goal for you, but it wasn't the goal that you would have wanted for yourself. And you may be so far divorced from knowing yourself that you don't even know what the goal would have been for you. Like, it's going to take some unearthing. Part of why I'm doing the free 30-minute one-on-one coaching session is I want women to have at least that aha moment. If you feel like your life has been pretty good, I learned to love my story, Dr. I actually have, a former coaching client on one of my testimony videos that she did for me say something like, I thought Learn to Love Your Story, that the title was a little woo, because for me, I didn't think I didn't love my story. But what she recognized, and what I'm hoping in these one-to-one coaching sessions, please go to the notes, remember, because you can sign up for your free 30-minute one-on-one with me, that I'm helping you have some of these aha moments where, yeah, my life is pretty good. I don't know, but there's something that's just not clicking. It feels meh. It feels stuck. These are the words that women will use with me. Now, for some of us, it's like really obvious. It's like, I feel terrible. I don't feel good enough. I don't feel, worthy. I don't feel like everything I did, I feel like it was a waste of my time. Now I've been divorced. And so I put all this time into that marriage. And why would I have wasted that? Or I put all this time and energy into these kids, and then they move out and they do their own thing. And it's like, I feel left. I feel like, I don't want to have to do things for them. Don't get me wrong. I'm really happy I created successful humans in the world. I just spent so much time doing that I lost time. And now I don't know, where to even begin to have a life for myself. I feel like midlife, like it's done. Now I'm over the hill. I'm not going to be able to do this. Well, my message to all women is that is not accurate, that we really can step into our own. And in actuality, that central nature of our life, our wisdom is pretty heightened at this point. We've had some life experience behind us. Our ability to access resource is much less tangled than it is for a 20-some-year-old like my niece that I was talking to. Like we're on that stuff a lot faster. So there's a lot of strengths that we bring to this level of indecision. But what I can tell you is, if you want to step into empowered decision making, if you want to empower yourself to start to figure out who and what you really are and where you want to take that, how you want to leave this world in a different place because you were in it, how you step into those kinds of empowered choices is by stepping into discomfort. We have to stop making the safe choice. We have to stop doing the thing that everybody else is telling us to do out of fear, like Dr. Trent said, out of fear that those around us won't like us or they'll leave us. The truth is, people are not going to like you and are going to leave you whether you do the safe thing or don't. That's the reality. Because don't tell me, if you look behind you, that people haven't left or not liked you when you made the safe decision. Right? So we've been deluded into believing that if we just go with the flow and do what's being asked of us, everything's going to be roses on the other side. And so even if what you're sitting in is everything doesn't feel like roses, I did all the right things, I don't feel, bad about where my life is, but Dr. Natalie, I don't really feel like it's outstanding either. It should be outstanding. And that is my point. That this life is such a gift, and that you are such a gift to this world. Like, legitimately, there are 8 billion people on this earth, and not a one of them looks like you, talks like you, is doing what you do or bringing what you bring to this world. Nor has there ever, in the billions of us before, ever been a version of you, and nor will there again be a version of just you. That is your enoughness, my friend. That is what you are holding the value of in your hands, making safe decisions to do what you've been told and live a pretty good life, but just feel like it isn't enough for you. If it feels that way, it's not. And I guarantee you that you can step into this. Empowered decision making isn't something that I can sit on a podcast and teach you how to do. Like, the concept of it, I can obviously have already kind of elaborated on. It's stepping into your own discomfort. It's doing things that are risky. It's trying to follow where you think that you want to be. And then it's about, like, litmus testing that. Okay, so I ventured out on this learntoloveyourstory.com thing over here. Is that working out for me or not? What's my next right move, right? It's about a series of decisions that are only focused on the steps right in front of you. Not as much about that, like, it has to look like the long-term goal. When you get stuck in this, I'm going to make this much money and be living in this kind of place and having this kind of life, you can find yourself not making empowered decisions in the present moment. In fact, you'll be making safe decisions in the present moment. So that's kind of the methodology of it, is really to kind of get more into the here and now premise and really be dialed into who and what you are presently. And in that compassionate self-awareness, take some risks and let yourself feel a little uncomfortable, because, my friends, regret is not a fun thing to experience later in life. And it really only shows us where we would have wanted to have made those empowered decisions. So, what we're trying to do is kind of get into the present moment and know where are those risky things. I'm going to take those risks instead of taking the safe path and regretting later, because I'd rather take the wrong decision now and not regret that I didn't at least try it later, right? This is where we are. And we have a lot more skills now to be stepping into that than we ever did, like my niece and nephew. I mean, sure, my nephew is being acculturated differently to be stepping into some of those risks, but even he had some drawbacks. Even he was like, oh, I don't know, I'll just try this. I just know that the methodology that he had of stepping into the next right thing in front of him is going to lead him quicker down the path of feeling like he's, living the life he wants to be living than the more reserved, safe decision making of, I don't want people not to like me. I don't want my boss to be mad because there's something written in my contract that's kind of a gray area. So if I do this side hustle thing, I don't know how they're going to feel about that. I don't want my niece worried about what that boss is going to think. I want her to be worried about in 10 years, what's she going to think about what she did today or didn't do today. That's what I want her to do, more like her brother is doing. I know that methodology of empowered decision making is going to take her further. So I cannot give you a roadmap for what the exact empowered decisions are that you need to take, but I definitely can give you the skills to have the methodology to be doing that. But I promise you, you only want to make this call and sign up for your 30-minute one-on-one with me if you're ready to be a little uncomfortable. Because the roadmap I'm going to give you is not in making the kinds of decisions that feel safe. It's just not going to be like that. It's going to be more like what Dr. Teray Trent says when she says, dig deep into the private chambers of your heart and build a foundation of strength and confidence on this path toward empowerment. That, my friends, is what it's going to feel like. And another quote that I really like by Amrita Pritham, many more in number are those stories which are not written on paper, but are written on the bodies and minds of women. I want you to know you're not the first people to venture out doing this. Like, there's a lot of us out here, and we want to lift all of you up. We want to lift one another up. This is really the premise behind why I focus in on women in midlife. If you haven't heard me say this in other podcasts or blogs or whatnot, I really believe that if I feed this group of people who have tentacles and touch the younger generations, the older generations, they're in helping professions, they are the caretakers of our world presently, I feel like I help you, you help all of us. And that's really what I'm talking about here. There are more stories not written. There are more ways to do this and to live an empowered life and not take all the safe routes out because that's what you've been taught to do. You're just doing what the internalized depression thing. You're just doing what you've been taught to do. But I know there's a lot more stories out there, and I want to create more of those stories, and I want to connect you with more of the people that are having those lives, those stories that they're living as they choose that empowered, risky, scary, sometimes uncomfortable at best decisions that are leading them down the path towards the life they want to be living. They're designing the lives that they love. They are living lives they love because that's what they're designing as they go. Instead of being fed this idea that if you check off the right boxes, if you do all the right things, you'll arrive eventually at this life that's great. And then you arrive, kind of, or you're like, did I arrive? Because is this it? Is this all there is? If you're there, this is a gift to you. Feeling that way is a gift to you because it tells you you're not in alignment yet with where you want to be, with the design you want for yourself. And there are definitely ways for you to get there. And I want to help you to do that. So be sure to go to the notes today, sign up for your one-on-one with me. Also be sure to keep listening because what we're going to be talking about in my next part of this series is how all of this not good enoughness feeds into a hustle culture. And when I'm talking about hustle, I'm talking about hustling for our worthiness. This touches every single human, that I can think of. It's very much in the DNA of a Western society, of a Western culture, and in America. Hustling for our worth is what we do best. Being human doers is what we do best, but it isn't always what serves us most. So if you want to hear more about that and about how I suggest that we kind of spin ourselves out of that hustle culture, then be sure to keep listening and share this and like it, and make sure that other women like yourself are getting this information and are hearing what I have to say, signing up for my freebies, and finally kind of learning where are those aha moments they need to move a little bit more forward towards a life they love. Learn to love their stories, learn to be able to live in a life they've designed that they love for themselves. Make sure to be sharing all of this information with those women in your life, because I am here to help all of you.